Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? I'd like to welcome you to our Chemwatch heat mapping webinar. We're going to help you visualize your chemical hazards. It's a great technology we have that incorporates lots of different parts of our technology and integrates that into one powerful tool to help you understand severity by locations using your floor plans. So our speakers today, we have Augusta Brindley and myself, Paul Benbow, and Tom Hassey will be doing a lot of the presentation. But also on the call with us is Arnold or AJ Kofi and Amy Pina. They'll be doing a lot of the question and answer stuff behind the scenes. So before we get started, I would like you to try to put your questions in the question and answer box. We have people that will be monitoring this and making sure they get answered kind of as we go through the event. We will have a live Q&A at the very end where we'll answer these questions and kind of talk about what we've accumulated and what the answers were. I know everyone always likes to hear what other people have asked, and I do too, because they think of things I don't. I'm always like, oh, that's great. And then lastly, I just want to thank you for your attendance today. I know you have things that you're busy doing during the day, and we appreciate your giving us some time out of your day to join us. So just a quick one slide on Chemwatch. We've been in business for 30 years. We're headquartered in Australia. We have 21 offices around the world. We have 3 in the US and a center of excellence in Tennessee. We have 5,000 clients globally. 7 of the top 20 Fortune 500 companies have our product. And anybody with chemicals would have our product, oil and gas, government, universities, anybody with chemicals. So just a quick, kind of an overview, 50,000 feet, the chemical hazard visualization using heat mapping. The market need is a holistic view of how to view your chemical hazards by severity and location. I mean, we can run out a spreadsheet and people that understand what they're looking at can look at the spreadsheet and get an idea. But using a heat map, any layperson, any management person, firefighter, CEO, they can look at that and they can understand where their hot spots are, why they're there, and then maybe understand how to better accommodate those needs. So really the goal is just to help people understand. It's just a visualization tool. So, what is Chemwatch heat mapping? So we take a 3D model of your structure, or it can be a 2D floor plan. AutoCAD floor plan is fine, but if you have 3D, we can do some, enhanced things with that. And then we basically turn colors based on the hot spot. And we do this by classification of the quantities and using links from the folders with the chemical information. Now, I don't want to steal any of Tom's thunder, but it's pretty cool how we're able to do that. We have really good data, we have a really good application, and we bring all that together, homogenize it, and then present that. So we kind of turn the power of the computer back on itself so people can just look at it and see. So I guess the final question is, how Chemwatch heat mapping can help. Well, users can easily see where their chemicals are and then understand what accommodations need. Maybe we need to split this room in half. Maybe we need to spread these out. Just helping you with that. The proximity of chemicals to other structures in the building, that might be important. What's on the other side of this wall? And just, how different hot spots based on flood scenario, different scenarios, flood, fire, explosion, things like that. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn the presentation over to Tom Hassey. Okay, Tom?
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for spending some time with us. So let me get started with what we'll call the pain points or the problem, and that is a holistic view of chemical hazards by its severity and location is quite frankly hard to build and hard to maintain in real time. So sites can have hundreds of rooms, thousands of cabinets. Many of you are global. You alone can have dozens, if not hundreds, of sites with thousands of rooms and tens of thousands of cabinets. And no group of personnel responsible for all this can be expected to be at each location 100% of the time and know what's going on, lack of a better term. I know many of you have developed your own approval system in-house to help visualize, so to speak, where are your substances and who's using them. But then again, that is not a holistic view. That's quite frankly just a set of inputs into a holistic view. EHS officers must perform risk assessments on many sites, many chemical storage areas, usage areas, very time consuming. It also is prone to error since most of it is human inputs. On-site OHS teams, they need to identify chemical hotspots relative to many types of emergencies like fire, flood, earthquake, exposure. So what is heat mapping? How would it address these pain points? Well, what it really is, simply put, it's the ability to locate your chemicals by severity and location using 3D imagery, whether it be solid models of buildings, 3D layouts, 360-degree digital imagery. So it's ability to locate your chemicals using 3D inputs, images of your buildings. So chemicals are shown by severity at every one of the physical locations. And this starts, we'll call it the 50,000 foot view, if you like, from the global view, sites, buildings, floors, but it becomes very granular, all the way down to the elementary level, like rooms, cupboards, and what's actually in these shelves. The hotspots are identified by severity using 5 color bands. Red obviously is the worst, and green is okay. Hotspots for each building level are created automatically from the Chemwatch user folders within our system. We have an inventory management tool that classifies these materials by its severity and the quantity, and it's dynamic. As you add quantities, severities change. As I just mentioned, the inventories in the Chemwatch system, they've already been assessed to create hazard ratings based on its classification and quantity located. And the heat map automatically updates these hotspots as you move your chemicals around. So buildings will change color as you move materials in and out of those buildings. And it's done in real time. So how does it work? It works really at 3 different levels, but the general concept is using metadata, XML, to map chemical hazard data into geometries. So the first, the 3D site models, or what's affectionately called in Autodesk world, doors, walls, windows. We can use a 3D site model, solids, or just a rendering to map building level chemical hazards data. So we create the 3D model with real dimensions. We capture these through Google View and then ask our users to give us data in Z or height. Many of you have required for almost 20 years now 3D solids models of all your facilities as part of the deliverable by the contractor. These models show buildings as separate entities within the context of the site and each other. So you can see by that picture, you can separate it out within a building. You can do fly-throughs, just like that can be done in the factories with the 3D geometry. The data from your folders is linked to these buildings and floors, and we use, as I mentioned earlier, we layer the metadata directly over the 3D geometry of the building. We use 360 imagery, digital images, to map the shelf level chemical hazards data. So fisheye images, 360 imagery can be created, smartphones, fisheye cameras. And what ends up happening is the creation of a Google Street View type of navigation is created of the interior of your buildings. And as you transition from one room to another, it'll show the different hazards because the data is linked from your folders to these cupboards and shelves. So again, we do this by layering metadata over the image. We use 3D or 2D if available, either one's fine, 2 or 3D floor layouts to map the floor level chemical hazards data. So again, I mentioned either 2 or 3D can be used, and you can create an internal view of a building, much like you see in the pictures. What this now allows you to do, much like the factory floor layouts allow you to add containers or map the human being, so to speak, from an ergonomic point of view onto the floor so you can understand interference or pinch points. This technology also allows you to include regulated cabinets, sprinklers, fire rated walls. So again, the floor plans can be just images of blueprints, but what we prefer is the actual layout model, which most of you have, again, from either your own internal development or contractors building systems in your plants have to provide these. So again, the data is linked from your folders to the actual rooms and other entities within a room. So again, we're layering metadata, we're layering over the layout. So we're using standard technologies. XML's been around 20 years. We've been messing with 3D models of factories and buildings and systems for 20 years. So now Chemwatch is taking advantage of all that data out there and mapping these two worlds together. So the future. Working on a couple things we're really excited about. Should be available, I was heard fourth quarter this year, but for sure safe next quarter. But we have a customer willing to push the envelope, willing to let us use your site data and some of your time to develop these. We'd be happy to do so. Just let us know. Augmented reality. So right now, the current heat maps are like a virtual reality session. The intention is eventually allow 3D models to be used by mobile devices. So we can use the 3D spatial information from mobile devices in place of the 3D models, as you can see by the picture. So what you're doing is you're overlaying metadata onto the mobile device screen. And what you can generate is various information warnings depending on the situation. And this was a huge aid for the emergency responders. This is what I'm really excited about, is that we've started modeling plume and spills using the physical features of a site. So the 3D mapping allows us to apply modeling algorithms to both spills and gas plumes, so their users can view the outcomes based on users' different scenarios. This can also be used in the event of a real accident using current conditions. So it has some tremendous capability. So how can I help you? You have direct access to the information in the chemical database of what to do about these chemicals. So yes, you can see them, you see where they're at, but since the data is in our inventory tool, you can then understand what do you need to do for spills, disposal, PPE, fire, standard operating procedures. All this information is in the Chemwatch system about these materials. For emergency situations, site plans can be made available to local first responders, inform them about what chemicals are, to inform about what chemicals are where. So I've had chat with, in fact, it was the Boulder, Colorado fire chief about just this issue. And that one of their sticklers, so to speak, is getting the data. By law, it's required within an hour of the fire, of their response to the fire. But a tool like this is, you don't have to look at data. It's intuitive. 3D models are intuitive to all levels of users in all languages. You don't need a translator to understand that that room in the left corner up there has some bad stuff in it. Helps you understand the proximity of your chemicals to high priority buildings, schools and hospitals as an example. So when you're deciding how to manage your inventory, you can understand, quite frankly, where you need to avoid putting dangerous materials because of its proximity. You can plan and review your chemical storages with respect to local regulations, and again, in the context of surrounding communities. Again, you can plan and manage how you're going to store these inventories, not just on use requirements, but the danger to its surroundings. These maps are interactive, so you can display different hotspots for various emergency procedures like floods, fire exposure, explosion. Great planning tool for ER response. A lot of these things can't be simulated. Well, not in a safe way in real time. So this is a great tool for managing that. OHS audits. These large sites can be inspected off-site. So for instance, it's not just dangerous materials that you can see and understand in terms of its proximity to either other rooms or outside of your buildings, but also you'll be able to see signage placement, extinguishers, where are they located, or if there's missing items. And this can be inspected before walkthroughs occur. So users can also add features to the heat map like fire sprinklers, fire extinguishers to help comply with various fire codes like IFC. Again, this is a 3D geometry, so you can add other geometric entities to it. And I apologize, the picture is a little stretched there, and I did that just before we started for reasons. Let me speak it first, and I'll show you a second. So users can view their inventory against IFC requirements like sprinklers, marking of regulated cabinets, firewalls, where the exits are, fire extinguisher locations, etc. Example I want to highlight. See in the 4 o'clock position down there, you basically have a red cabinet, and to its left and up is a sprinkler. Well, now you can identify you have some dangerous, maybe flammable materials in that cabinet. So now you can understand sprinkler placement. Alerts are generated when inventory storage limits are exceeded, and that's actually built into our inventory management tool at the folder level. But then these alerts are displayed as green checks or red crosses in the heat maps model. So quite frankly, you could look at this from a global point of view and understand where you're having trouble globally with inventory storage limits being exceeded on a continual basis. Maybe you need to do some training, or maybe there's an inventory management issue there. In other words, maybe you need more sites, lack of a better term. You need to spread some things out. So examples, a couple examples of heat mapping applications. One of them is accurate and up-to-date chemical inventory registers. So as an example, you have 3 shelf units in a lab containing chemicals. So what you do is you conduct a comparison of the register, in other words, what you have built into the folder level of your chemical management system, to a real-time 360 photo of the lab. And when you look at the photo, you realize, geez, I have 4 shelves, not 3. So obviously the register is wrong. You need to update that. That's a quick way of validating, again, accurate and up-to-date chemical inventory registers. Another one is emergency planning. I was a facilities engineer for a while with one of the big automakers, and this is a real problem in the plants. You got 1 million square feet with 3,000 people in it, with all sorts of dangerous spots and pinch points and whatnot. So in this case, you can do great emergency planning. So an example, you got a 3D model of a room that identifies flammable goods are in that area of a building or floor. And then as you look at it, you realize there may be an accessibility problem if it were to catch fire. You're not going to see that looking at a set of folders in a 2D view. An example would be as you look at this material in a room, you go outside the room, you realize that the aisleway that's used to access the room, 5 feet or 10 feet to its right is the stairway from the lower level. Will you be able to get a fire hose to make basically a very hard U-turn and be able to access that room and be able to access it quickly, not take 5 minutes to bend the hose? So flammable goods can then be prohibited from being stored in rooms such as I described, at the end of corridors or surrounded by stairs. Very valuable tool. So how do we get you started? Well, we have to create 3D models of your site. So we need 2D floor plans or 3D floor plan, floor layout, interactive word, 3D digital imagery, 3D models of your facilities. We can grab some data off of Google View, but again, it's 2D. So we're going to need your inputs on it if we do that. So either the user provides these floor layouts, imagery, or Chemwatch, we can arrange to source the info as required. In other words, hire people to go out and collect that for you. 2D layouts or 360 images are not necessarily required to use the feature, but the more of this type of information that we have, the more useful and granular the feature will be. So more granular data you can provide us to build that model with, the more helpful the model is going to be to you. So with that, we're going to run a 3-minute promo, no words, thank goodness, right, of how the product works. Once this is complete, Paul will jump in and talk a little bit about Chemwatch.
Newly developed solutions locate chemicals through 3D rendered images of your entire building. Individual buildings may also be identified as chemical hotspots. Building hotspots per level will automatically be created as you link system folders which describe chemical inventories. These inventories have already been assessed to create hazard ratings based on classification and quantities. Heat maps will update automatically as you record movement of your chemical inventory. Through available blueprints or floor plans, we create and incorporate a 3D plan with an entire 360 panoramic view of the floor. Heat mapping can be applied to rooms or even storage areas within rooms. Webster will assist you in identifying your precise location as you move between rooms. Heat mapping allows you to quickly identify areas which might require special management strategies. Heat mapping allows you to prepare emergency procedures where human or natural phenomena intervene. Chemical storage or work areas within rooms can also be identified, linked to inventories, and heat mapped. You might also choose to add features such as fire sprinklers or extinguishers to assist in ensuring compliance with various fire codes such as IFC. Chemwatch solutions are the first to fully support various fire codes globally. Factors which dictate storage limits for hazardous goods include floor level, sprinkler systems, access to firefighting equipment, availability of regulated cabinet. Alerts are generated when storage limits are exceeded. This will be displayed as ticks and crosses. The Chemwatch heat map solution is truly revolutionary and allows for the first time a geospatial view of your chemical inventory. The heat map solution also allows you to identify at a glance where highly hazardous chemicals might be located on a small footprint. Here at Chemwatch, we are excited about this new concept in chemical management, as are many agencies, authorities, and emergency responders. Chemwatch, chemical heat mapping.
Okay, great. Hope everybody enjoyed that video. I should have given Claude Neary, our Chief Regulatory Officer, credit for his voiceover on that. I'd like to spend a few minutes just talking about how we're able to do this. And chemical management is our core business, and heat mapping is just part of our chemical management platform. So to kind of take a step back to explain how we do this, it comes down to we just have better data. So we have over 60 million vendor SDSs in our database. We have over 350,000 Chemwatch, what we call a gold SDS, and that's an SDS that we've reauthored. And we can accept data from either our vendor SDSs or our gold SDSs. A gold SDS allows us to move between 90 country formats, 47 languages, and we can simply do that with a few mouse clicks. We have an integrated chemical regulatory database or chemical regulation library, and we have almost 7,000 databases, 6,960 I think was the last count. And we keep this globally, so over 90 countries. So if you need to know, I have a chemical that I'm using in my process in Taiwan, is that okay? It's in Germany, is that okay? It's in France, we can let you know that. And in this database, we have over 3 million substances that are organized into 8,000 families. So we have really good data on this side. We also have a GHS classification database. Our authoring tool is fabulous, and we have over 250,000 classified substances preloaded. Another differentiator about Chemwatch is we have about 80 plus chemical people on staff. So we do have a large IT department because we're a software vendor. So we have about 45 developers, 50 developers that work full-time only on our product. And our product was written from scratch by this team of developers. So we didn't acquire somebody else's technology, then try to put that into our system. And when you work with Chemwatch, one thing you notice is we never ask our users to copy paste data. If it's available here, it's leveraged there. So in this example, heat maps, we wouldn't ask you to rekey any data or copy paste from spreadsheets or export, import. It's all just seamless right inside the application. And like I mentioned, we author about almost 5,000 SDSs a month for very large companies as part of our day-to-day duties. So we author SDSs, we understand chemicals. We've also been managing and updating and keeping a very large database current of chemicals. And then lastly, our platform, we run on Amazon Web Services, so we run the Amazon cloud. Everything is software as a service, so minimal IT is required for your users. And we have a web service API, so a lot of companies will take an existing application that they need to feed better data. Maybe they need better vendor SDS data. Maybe they just want to access another part of our data. So we have a very robust API that allows that. So everything's plug and play. If you just need a couple modules, we can do that, or you can do all your modules. We do offer global support, like I mentioned earlier. So I think the nuts and bolts of our system, though, is vendor SDS. And vendor SDS is kind of a necessary evil we all kind of deal with because of compliance. But we kind of take this need to have vendor SDSs in our system, and this is how we leverage it to manifest our heat map solution. So let me kind of explain that, but I'll start off with this slide where we basically input your vendor SDSs into our system. So whether we find the vendor SDS or whether another user finds it kind of via a crowdsourced model, we get your vendor SDS in the system. And if you find that we don't have one, you can submit it yourself. However we get this data, whether it's web crawled, another user, you submit it, we bring it into our QC process. It's reviewed by one of our Chemwatch chemists, and then we input it in the database. And once it's in the database, anybody else that has that same chemical will get a notification, and then we leverage that data. So this is the most important part of this, kind of a busy slide, I apologize for that. But that lower right corner is how we're able to create the heat maps. So in addition, we can crank out things like labels. Tom mentioned worker safety cards, PPE spills. We can push that data into an ERP system or another system. We can do any kind of reporting just about you can think of, and we can update these locations. So we do all this is included with our system. But the magic of how it works is we actually take your vendor SDS data, and we will take these vendor SDS data points. So we extract about 67 data points. So as we're extracting this, we understand what chemical is. So one of the ingredient or constituent chemicals in, say, WD-40, we map that through our database. So if that chemical in there is, mapped through, then we understand what makes that chemical what it is, what the characteristics are, what makes that chemical tick, so to speak. We know how much you have, we know the percentage, and we understand that you have X amount of that chemical. So we aggregate all that information together from the vendor SDS data. So we know what chemicals you have where because we have that in the folder. We understand the chemical. We understand if it's a commercially available product like a WD-40, we understand the constituent chemicals because we've mapped those through to our database. So our excellent data is our differentiator. We're able to leverage this information that we have about these chemicals. So we're not just managing a PDF like a lot of our other vendors in our space. We actually understand what ingredients of that chemical are in there. So it's pretty easy just to manage a bunch of PDFs, but it's a lot harder, but it's beneficial to understand the ingredients in that chemical. So we can take the quantity data, run that through our engine, and then basically generate the reports that we in turn color code the floor plans that give you the heat maps. So it's kind of a long running explanation of how we work, but it's actually very powerful what we're able to do. And we do that with our excellent data. One thing we're very proud of is we're trying to take all the burden away from you keeping your vendor SDS sheets current. So we actually have idle time on Amazon web servers that we actually look for SDSs. So we have web crawlers that will go to a site, harvest all the SDSs. Then we have an artificial intelligence system that looks at the new SDS versus the one we have on record. If we see there's a difference, then we send it to somebody to actually look at it and determine which one's most current. If we find the new one is more current, we automatically bring that in our system. So we're trying to get our users to never have to bother with it. We just always keep everything current. So this is one technology that we have that we're excited about. So if we were to find a new SDS, we report those changes to you in a status report. And you can have this, weekly, monthly, however you like it, but we basically put that information in there. So we can do a side-by-side report, so you can actually look at the data side by side, understanding what's changed, what has the vendor changed that gave them a new updated SDS for me. Or maybe it's just some of those things that they just created a new one because the time required it. But regardless, Chemwatch gives you the tool to help you manage the change in that vendor SDS. So in addition to finding it, we help you understand why they're different. So like I said, the ingredient reports, regulatory ingredients of interest, products that contain those ingredients, and the ingredients, tracking those is, I think, the magic of Chemwatch of what makes us different and better, because we do track that. We understand what makes that chemical work because we're an authoring company. So we have the data on that chemical. So when we map that in, we understand. And now we know where those chemicals are located. And that allows us to be able to present you with the fire code. So we also have a mobile solution. We probably should talk about this more than we do. But basically, it allows all of our data to be accessed via a smart device. So because we're cloud-based, basically your web browser is Chemwatch or your phone is Chemwatch, be it iPhone or Android or a tablet. And you can actually look in this example, I simply drilled down to chemical store. I clicked that with my finger. Then I go into that location. I clicked on that chemical and then I pulled up the SDS. I'm able to use my 2 fingers and zoom, and I can send, forward, do anything I want with that data from the phone. So I can also do an offline archive, so I can take that information, say I'm in a petrochemicals or I'm in a cruise industry where I may not have the ability to have internet. Maybe I'm an oil refinery where they don't allow devices. I can actually take that data and download it to the device, or I can download it to a desktop machine in the event for emergencies. So I can have that data very quickly. I can offline archive that, and it's very simple. I just pull it up in a web browser. I'm able to search, do very rudimentary searches, and then I can put that information on the screen, click on it, and the SDS will appear. So our offline technology is actually really good, and having the phone gives it the next level. So you could actually have that information remote with areas that have no internet connection. And the Chemwatch, we have a family of products. Our Gold FFX is our most popular module, but we have a variety of products. Our risk assessment tool is excellent. Like I said, our Smart Suite product is running on mobile phones. Our Galleria Chemical is our regulatory database, global. And our authoring tool, Authority, is a global SDS authoring creation tool. Okay, time for the question and answers. So I'm going to open it up with the Chemwatch team. Any questions out there, Tom? Amy?
Yes, got a couple goodies here. Let me start with a question: is the software available if people want to use their own blueprints maps rather than provide that geometry data to us? And the answer is yeah, you can create or upload your own maps, blueprints. Our system connects with Google Maps, so you can identify your own locations using that technology. For 3D visualization, though, our teams would need to create this map for you based on your site. Blueprints can be uploaded and managed by users who have the proper read-write permissions in the system. So yeah, we can do it, but if you're going to get into some of the more granular models, let's face it, Google Maps is limited. So we would need some level of input. I'm sure that this question involves what I call secure sites. So what we'll do also is run this by our Chief Regulatory Officer, Mr. Claude, and get you a more in-depth response to that.
Great.
I have a couple more. Yeah, are we looking at integration with space management systems or facility management software? Yes, we're actually in confidential conversations with a couple of them, and it is our intent in the future we're going to integrate with someone, if not more than one. Also, another question: have we considered showing exposure levels in each area? This feature is also part, and yes, this feature is part of our future development with the Plume modeling that I showed. The current approach would be to use math-based inputs like evaporation rates to determine exposure levels as they change with time. And the users will also be able, with this new feature, will also be able to create different scenarios like a closed area, etc.
I like this question. How is the heat map different from a GIS map? And I see where Augusta answered that one succinctly. But it opens up the conversation that really a GIS data is you're feeding data to it, it's putting it on a map. Now, internal floor plans, I don't think, ESRI tends to be the leader in that. They're not as good at internal stuff as they are, large pieces of property. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. We're just taking data. So where does the data come from? That's always the trick. And that's what I elaborated to in my part of the presentation. We take that ingredient data, we contrast that with the amount you have, and then we're able to present that data. So we could, in fact, take this data and push it to ESRI, and they could create a GIS map. So if you're a GIHS or a ESRI shop, we probably could export that data and allow you to do that. So in many ways, they're the same. We're just using Google Earth, and we're using AutoCAD floor plans or whatever floor plans you have to do the interior stuff. But as far as the external stuff, we could push that to the ESRI. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, Tom, you got the next one?
Yeah, got another one. Also, just to preface, we will be sending out all questions with their answers to everybody. So if any of you are out there scribbling away furiously, please stop and enjoy the conversation, and you'll have all these answers here shortly. And also at the end of this broadcast, you have, if there are questions you think of post webinar, feel free to send them to Paul or I. Have we considered radiation mapping? And yes, this feature is part of our future development with the Plume modeling feature. Right now, our inventory management tools and our scan-in, scan-out technology, our barcode-based inventory management tool, both are currently available. These both enable activity rates based on manufacture date and half-life. It'll be easy to do since we've already gathering the data.
I think somebody's actually been looking at our product roadmap, because we can take the data, say you have another system, you export the quantity information, we run it through our engine, and we can create the heat maps. Now, it's not real time when we do that, because we're basically a slave to we're the downstream application from your system that's keeping track of your inventory. So if you have Chemwatch's tool, yes, it's real time. If you don't, the data is only as current as the last time you exported that inventory information. But the answer is, if you have an existing system that keeps track of your inventory, we can work with that and create the floor plans. If your inventory doesn't move much and you're just wanting to show management, or maybe have something for your firefighting requirements, it's excellent tool. But if you need it to be real time, part of the Chemwatch roadmap is actually doing that in real time. So that's a great question. Next.
Yeah, we have a couple good ones here that may have to get answers from our expert in Melbourne. Regarding the question about exposure levels, is noise monitoring data something you are working on as well? I believe so, but we will have a formal response in the Q&A document that we send out as part of the thank you note. So the thank you note will be sent to anyone who's registered and obviously attended. That'll have this recording. It'll have the PowerPoint, the slide deck, and also a Q&A document. Another question, and I don't have the answer for, and we'll have to get it for you, is how do we track movements as we move chemicals around? Obviously, we know their final resting place based on the map, but I assume this question is about answering, can I track the previous movements and understand basically where it was in reference to where it is now? So we owe you some answers there.
I see one more question that says, how will 3D images be taken and uploaded? And if you get a few minutes, you can actually look at a product called a Matterport. And a Matterport, and Google also has a camera where you can actually move inside a space, and it uses lasers and cameras and GPS locations. It actually can build interior walkthroughs of your spaces. And this is kind of, you know, out there and in the future kind of stuff, but then taking that technology, we can assign those attributes, and then you could use augmented reality. So getting that data in the system, even though it sounds like, oh my gosh, that'd be an insurmountable task, taking all these pictures and assigning that, there is some technology coming. And like I said, Matterport, I think it's matterport.com, actually shows you some of the innovation that's happening, you know, in California mostly, of doing geospatial, you know, imaging so you can capture 3D spaces into your system. And so it's a cool technology. It's one of my favorites. I'm, you know, kind of a geek at heart. So, but if you're really into that stuff, you know that our management is also into it, and we're doing a lot of development in that area as well. All right, Tom, anything else?
Oh yeah, when they're pouring in, can a tier 2 or TRI report be generated from the system? Yes, we have a SARA filter that's built into the inventory management tool. So by clicking on a folder or a set of folders, and then clicking on the SARA filter, it'll only identify those that need to be part of the report, along with their quantities. We can send you some more information on that.
Yeah, our SARA tier 2, it's really good, and we probably should talk about that more than we do. We might even could have a webinar on that very subject, but yeah, we definitely do that. Anything else, Mr. Tom? Or
yeah, here's a cutting edge one. And can our sector-specific classification system be integrated into the heat map? It tells our workers which level of protection is needed during standard emergency situations. Can data from real-time monitor be included? This is on our long-term roadmap. We would be interested in learning more about your use case. So I have the name of the gentleman that put that question forward. We'll reach out to you, sir.
That's a great question.
And understand more what you're talking about.
Oh, I love it though.
Provide the answer. Now, if there's some specifics you want to keep private to your situation, we'll chat about that. But we would certainly like to present to everyone a generalized answer on that, because that's a very powerful tool to provide. And we have all the data. We have all the data available to do it. It's just a mapping issue, but I don't want to speak out of turn, so to speak. I'll let our regulatory expert in Melbourne define them.
I love that question. That's a great question. Thank you for that one. Anyway, well, Tom, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our last slide, and kind of makes sense, dovetails into this presentation. Just safe chemical storage. We were about a few months ago, we were looking at what events we need to do, and it just came up like almost obvious, like, well, people just need help on safer chemical storage. So it's a universal need, and so our next event will be on July 28th, and same time, and you'll get an invitation to that as well. And and please sign up for that, because we're excited. It's it's kind of a bread and butter presentation, but something I think is very, very important and very needed. So Mr. Tom, I guess I don't have anything else to talk about. You have anything?
No, other than I just want to clarify that young lady does not work at our company. Okay. And she does not use our software either. So we'll just like to leave it at that. Thank you everyone for attending, and look forward to your attending our next one. And certainly in the meantime, after we send our thank you note, feel free to reach out if you have any further questions, and we'll be hopefully chatting with everyone as part of our follow-up. So again, have a great day.
Yep. And thanks everyone for your time. On behalf of the whole Chemwatch team, great job as usual. And we look forward to speaking with you in the future, and hope if you have any chemical management needs, you'll reach out to us at Chemwatch. Thank you so much.